If you had any idea how much work it just took to squeeze this tripod into the corner of my dining room so you can get a little hint of my new antique and Christmas tablecloth, you'd all be cheering for me. You can't see the fringe, but oh my gosh. Because I was married to a monster for 24 years, a lot of people on my channel think that I know something about red flags, and I do. My name is Jenny Gage, and this is Life Take 2, where I share my harrowing escape from Mormon trad life. And today, I'd like to share one of the biggest red flags that everybody overlooks all the time. I don't think that we should. And that red flag is marrying someone from clear across the country that you know absolutely nothing about and who is very culturally different than you. Maybe instead of doing this video as a negative, don't marry somebody from clear across the country that you have no context for in your culture. Maybe I want to reverse that and do it as a positive. We need to start normalizing and idealizing and celebrating dating local. I don't know if you've seen this video going around of the AI generated stereotypical couples from every state in America. It's so great. I think I've watched it 6 times now. And I just about die every time I see Arizona and Arkansas. I'm an Arizona girl. I did spend a little bit of my childhood up in Oregon because my dad was from there, but I've spent 38 years of my 50-year life in the sunny state of Arizona, which is very culturally distinctive from Arkansas. Even though I talk a lot on my channel about growing up very poor and not having all the food to eat and socks to wear and things like that, I came from a family that had been very highly educated, and I still had music lessons, and I started reading when I was 4 and read every book that I could possibly get my hands on. And I was put into a special class where I was shipped out to a different school for high IQ people for a lot of my childhood. So I was poor, but refined, I guess is how I would kind of put it. And Arizona is all about sunshine and extensions and bleached teeth and I don't know, keeping up with the Joneses could probably be our state motto. But I want to change that specifically to keeping up with brother and sister Jones. So appropriate. My ex-husband, Jake, grew up in a trailer, in a little trailer, not like a double wide or a single wide, just an actual little trailer in his grandma and grandpa's backyard, deep in the woods of Arkansas. I've been to his childhood trailer, and it's really, 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 really rustic. And he lived in a tiny town with hardly any people. And while his childhood was running around in the forest, hunting stuff and throwing pine cones at the neighbors, I was learning how to be an accomplished musician. And we two had absolutely nothing in common whatsoever. You want to know how we met? Mormonism. Long before Tinder and Bumble and all those other online apps, the Mormon church knew that they needed their Mormon men to marry Mormon women. So they set up their own bachelor islands all over the place called BYU, Rick's College, BYU, Idaho, single adult wards. And that is not actually how I met Jake, but that is how Jake's mom, who is from Arkansas, and Jake's dad, who is from Portland, Oregon, met and married. And this is very standard for Mormon kids to go to BYU. I have brother and sister-in-laws who are from like Guatemala and Portland, Texas and Arkansas, Portland and Boston. One of my best friends was from Japan, and her Mormon missionary husband met her while he was on his mission and went back for her afterwards. So a little Mesa, Arizona kid with a Japanese wife. And that's pretty typical for the Mormon church. In fact, I know few other circumstances outside of online dating sites where people were more mobile in their dating options than Mormonism. Most of my normal friends just married kids that we all went to high school with, or maybe they met somebody in the next town over when they were at community college. But within my Mormon circle, we all had these exotic combinations. When I was 19, I was waiting tables at the Olive Garden in Portland, Oregon, where my parents were living after I had just come home from college. And I was introduced to my husband, who is living with his dad, in Portland, Oregon after his Mormon missionary, but had been raised his whole entire life in that little teeny trailer in Arkansas. And if it wasn't for the Mormon church, we two would have never crossed paths. Specifically, if you're not following this story, if his mom and dad hadn't gone to BYU and gotten married and gotten divorced, and mom hadn't moved back home to Arkansas, and then he hadn't gone on his mission, and after his mission decided that he wanted to come up to Portland, Oregon, where there were more dating and marriage and just general life options within the church. And we hadn't had a friend from church who then sat down at my table and introduced us. Without the Mormon network, we would have never crossed paths. We shouldn't have. And that is what this video is all about. And it's kind of ironic in my own life that the Mormon church taught about how difficult it is to have a successful marriage when people have two different religions, but they didn't teach anything about what if you have two different cultures? What if you are a Portland, Oregon, Scottsdale, Arizona, smarty pants musical talent, little nerdy girl, and he is a little hunting, running around in the woods guy from Arkansas? Do you think that that's a good foundation for marriage? Statistically, it's not. Cultural differences can really undermine even the best relationships. And having somebody from clear across the country makes it very difficult to get to know who they are. I had never been home to my husband's hometown, had never met his family, had never seen where he went to school, met his friends. I had no context for who he really was. It's like on The Bachelor when they're all in the mansion and they're all looking fancy with their push-up bras and they're all spray tanned, and it's like, yeah, I picked this one. And then you get to their hometown and it's not what you think. It's crucial for us as humans to have that full disclosure, to be able to know who we're getting into relationships with. And dating people who come from all over the place is a big barrier to that. And at the same time, Jake had no concept for who I was. He had never hung out with my friends ever. We never, ever hung out with one another's friends. He didn't spend very much time with my family. He only saw me on dates very isolated away from my crowd. It was only after we got married that we started to see, oh, shit, we're nothing alike whatsoever. Even if he had been nice and hadn't been nuts, even if we hadn't had all the Mormon stuff and the trad wife life, we could have never, ever worked out. I remember Jake one time saying it best. He said, "You're a fancy cat and I'm a hunting hound." So let's say that that had actually been a really good combination and we had fallen in love with the differences in one another and really embraced it. And that just diversified our lives and added a little bit of excitement. Then we fell into the problem of my family's in Phoenix and Portland, and Christmas is coming up. Where do we go? Your family's down in Arkansas and Texas. And we were always sacrificing everything all the time. And that was a constant source of conflict. It worked out a teeny little bit for us because his dad and stepmom and a couple of half sisters were up there in Portland. Otherwise, it would have been a disaster. My marriage collapsed and my Arkansas husband abandoned me after 24 years of marriage. And I started dating again. I right away got on all the dating apps and was dating people from all over the country and just picturing myself, well, what if I moved to Hawaii? What if I moved to California? What if I moved to St. George, Utah? What would that be like? And then I made a conscious decision to get off of all the apps and only date local people that I met in real life. And so I met Kevin, my partner, at the Costco gas station. And here is the beauty of our relationship. We had extremely similar backgrounds, even down to, I think that some of our German ancestors are like second cousins way back when, not enough to impact us. When we were first getting to know each other, we would comment all the time that like we were living the same life, just in different places. And we had spent our adult lives, you guys, literally within a mile of each other for like 10 years. And then within just 2.5 miles of each other for like the last little bit. The week before I met Kev, we had both been at the farmer's market together. He was one of my YouTube followers on my Goofy Divorce Care podcast. I didn't know that he existed. And he had watched me podcasting from the farmer's market and was like, hey, I was just there. We had just walked right past each other at the farmer's market. Eventually we would bump into each other at Costco. Go for a jog, just a mile and a half away from my house. In this riparian reserve, And on the other side of the fence, every once in a while, a few times a month, there would be a man on a lawnmower mowing the lawn of the school baseball field. And that was Kev. We were probably standing in line behind each other at Costco or Target all the time. No idea that each other existed, but doing the same thing. So when we finally bumped into each other, not only did we have very similar backgrounds growing up, but we were already both doing the same things at the same time all the time. So it was perfect for a busy single mom and a busy single dad to just like, hey, I'm already going to the farmer's market. I'll just go to the farmer's market with you. And I already live here in Gilbert. Your kids are a mile away from my kids. Let's blend our families. It just made everything so beautifully convenient that it was magical. And because we lived in the same community, we had mutual friends, which was kind of weird and creepy. Like, as we look back at it, like we spent our whole entire lives just living parallel to one another. Anyway, so I could reach out to these mutual friends and say, hey, I just went on a date with your buddy Kev. What can you tell me about him? I was able to get to know so much about him because he lived right there in my hometown where I had eyes on him. As I look back on my whole entire young adult life, dating in high school and college before I met Jake, and then after my divorce, all of these guys all over the world, it really hits me what a big red flag this is. That, first of all, I would have to sacrifice so much with my tribe and my community and my identity to become a Utah wife or a Florida wife or a New York wife. And I would have to take such a leap of faith, just blindly. I'm going to go spend my life with this person in a place that I've never been, with people that I've never met, and just hope that he is the same person in Florida that he was at BYU. The incompatibility that can come from the cultural differences. And then on the other side, what happens if that relationship isn't going well? And my whole tribe, my whole family is back here, and now I'm over here. That separation from your community can be a real barrier to stepping out of toxic, unhealthy, abusive relationships anywhere on that spectrum. And they can sometimes keep you stuck. And then you may find yourself kind of rooted in, and maybe the relationship does end and you can never go back over there. You're just kind of stuck with a fragmented tribe and no husband. And then what? Well, it's certainly true that opposites attract. They don't make for the easiest relationships, and there is overwhelming data to support that. So in conclusion, let's normalize dating the local boys. It's a great idea. Now I'd love to hear from you. Did you date and marry local, or are you a long distance meetup? And how's that going?